Good afternoon. I'm Scott Maslansky, a program director at CDFA. I'll be presenting this implementation workshop with Nate Olson, who I'll introduce in a bit. A couple of housekeeping things. It'll be about an hour and a half we have allotted for the workshop, and we probably won't take an hour or so for the presentation. We'll have some questions after, and we'll also have some moments where you can ask questions during the workshop. Don't hesitate to ask as we go along. You can use the question and answer, the Q&A option in Zoom here, and use the chat only for comments or if we ask you to put something in the chat. And again, we'll be pausing throughout, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. So today's presentation is focused on implementation and management of your award. Many of you attended the Tax Credit 101 workshop in July, which was focused on marketing and selling your tax credits. Today, we will cover the following topics. The Tax Credit Implementation Guide, which is a newly developed reference that supports content from this workshop as well as from Tax Credit 101, which many of you have already been to. We'll give a brief reminder of how the tax credit works. We'll provide a timeline of how the tax credit administration moves along. And then we'll give a tour of the grants management system, followed by a little bit about managing your grant in the grants management system. And then we'll give you some additional resources and we'll answer more questions. Before we jump in, I'd like you to take a moment to enter into the chat box your name and the organization you are representing. This way, you can all better understand who's in attendance today. And I would also like to make sure you are familiar with other staff from CDFA who are involved in supporting the implementation of your award. So the tax credit program staff are available as resources during the implementation phase of your tax credit award. The project managers, who are mostly on that top line there, are part of the team. These are your go-to people for the program, and especially in the case of the tax credit awards that we're talking about today, Maureen and Justin. Again, these are like the go-to folks for most of the work that you'll be doing in the program. Maureen Quinn is a tax credit program project manager, as well as being really key to your pledge and donor questions. And then Justin Parker will also be a project manager for some of your projects. As a program director, I will oversee your reporting and requests for funding and your required documentation. And then moving along, actually skipping over to the far right, you'll see Priscilla Baez at the top. She assists with grants management system registrations and access. And then below her is Nate Olson on the screen there, who you'll hear from more about in a bit. And he supports CDFA's data work and our GMS system. The two other staff shown from the tax credit program, they focus on the community economic development capacity building part of the program, and that's Kirsten Barton and Molly Donovan. Again, Maureen and Justin are going to be your key contacts here. So I wanted to give a brief review of how the tax credit works. So CDFA has already awarded your tax credit allocations. You'll secure pledges from New Hampshire businesses. The businesses then pay the donation to CDFA. CDFA provides the businesses with a tax credit letter documenting the donation. And then funds for the project are available to be released to the project once you've completed all of your fundraising and the funds have come in the door to CDFA. So I'm going to move a little bit slowly on this timeline because there's a lot in this. And this is also will be shown in your implementation guide. So you'll be able to see this graphic there. But I'm going to take you on a little bit of a step-by-step because it's I think pretty helpful information. It depicts a typical year managing a CDFA tax credit award. Of course, you might have a 2-year award. So imagine the fundraising cycle continues into the second year of your grant. You've already received your award in June, and your project was added to CDFA's electronic pledge portal in early July. That's on our website. That's a location where donors can come and learn a little bit about your project, and then they can click to pledge. So that's already been added. You've received the award letter in July, and we are now in the contracting process. The documentation that you need for your award gets uploaded into GMS, and this is partly by you and partly by CDFA. We'll talk more about how that's done in a little while. There are various documents that are required in order to develop the contract and others that are needed prior to your first disbursement of funds. I put a time frame in here that's basically, already happening into October. That's probably where the bulk of the documentation will take place, but some will take place after that as well. The fundraising phase starts as soon as you are able to get going on your fundraising through the first fiscal year deadline for pledges. Again, you will probably continue to some extent past then, but that's really the key part of this year's fundraising period. And then for the next year of the cycle, you would do the same. The first monthly fundraising report is due on the 5th of every month, starting in September. March 31st is the deadline for that fiscal year's pledges. And then June 30th is when the donations are due to be paid on those pledges. That's when the donors send the money in for those pledges. Again, if you have a 2-year award, that's going to be repeated in the second year. Next, we'll move on to disbursements through our claims process. So when we're paying money to you, you're submitting a claim to us for the payment. That's what it's called, a claim. They can only be made, these claims or these payments, once pledges for the entire award are received, and then the payments are limited based on the net of the pledge payments that have been received by CDFA. So before you can access funding from CDFA, you have to secure all of those pledges for both the years of your award if you have a 2-year award, and then you can submit claims only for the funds that have been paid into CDFA on that amount. And there are some requirements for the claims to some documentation of the money that you've spent to be able to get your funds. Reporting, in addition to your monthly fundraising report, comes through an annual outcomes report, your annual status report. And this is due on July 31st of each year your award is active until your project is closed. This won't be happening for a while, so we won't get into a lot of detail on that. But basically, you're reporting on the outcomes that you specified in your application. I'll talk about implementations and resources in a minute, but Melissa, just let me know if there's any questions coming in specifically about the timeline, because that's a lot of information there.
That's looking good for now, but I'm sure as people process that we'll see some more questions pop up.
Okay. I know I went really slow, but there's a lot of info there, so hopefully that was helpful for everyone. I wanted to get into now a few resources to consider for, again, the administration of your grant award. So the implementation guide provides a helpful reference for the grant administration process and links on helpful how-tos, templates, and examples. We are still expanding this document, so you might find some areas are more robust than others. This is a newer guide, and it's got a lot of content in it. We're really trying to set it up as a reference so that you can get to the information you want quicker without, diving into a really long document. And we will be sending out the link to that hopefully later today. It might be, tomorrow morning. The resource links are a shortcut to certain resources that are listed in the guide, and they're held in a table at the end of the guide. So you'll find links to additional resources within the guide as we describe the different components in GMS, for example, but you'll also find them all grouped together at the bottom. The Resource Hub is a companion website to CDFA's website, and this has additional information that might be helpful. The tax credit information, for the most part, is fairly similar to what's in the guide, but there's some additional content as well on the tax credit program and other programs from CDFA. So we're going to walk through several of the processes for managing your grants that are described in these resources above, specifically in the implementation guide. But first, because all of the grant administration activity takes place on our grants management system, we're going to get a tour of that system from Nate.
Thank you, Scott. Welcome to my personal favorite part of the presentation, and that's the GMS tour. You all got complimentary front row seats, and let me tell you, The energy in this crowd is unbelievable. So before we begin the tour, I want to set the stage. This tour is intended to prime your brain a little bit. You'll have access to written tutorials, as Scott just said, on how to accomplish everything we're going to learn today. And those resources will be available in your implementation guide. But our hope is that when you're using those written materials, it will be easier if you've have been exposed already to the content during this tour. Um, Something to note is that the system that we're using for managing your grant is the same system you use to apply for the tax credit program. And so, love it or hate it, you likely already have some useful skills under your belt. And so, with that, let's take a peek at our set list. So, during our tour, we're going to be covering username and password reset, using the main menu, updating profile and organization information, as well as navigating your grant. So let's get that opening act out here, and we'll kick it off with some password reset guidance. Sweet. So here we are on the login page for GMS. As a reminder, the URL for this login page is www.nhcdfagrants.org. And again, there's that same system and account you use to submit your application. So you can use those same credentials to log back in here. If you ever forget your password, there's an automated system to regain access. And so to use that system, there are links circled in green right here on the screen under the sign in button on the GMS login page. So those links will guide you through the user ID and password recovery process if you ever get locked out. If you don't have an account yet, use the click here to register button circled in yellow. As we get rolling into grant management, it's super important that every person who's accessing your grant has their own GMS account. Accounts should never be shared between multiple users. So with that, we're going to log in and we'll transition to our main act. Sweet. So pictured here is the first screen you'll see every time you log into GMS. On the left-hand side is the main menu, which lets you choose modules and functions. On the right-hand side, circled in blue, is the main content area. This is where the selected page, form, or dashboard from the menu appears for you to work within. The menu is made up of modules, each representing a primary function of the system. So examples include the dashboard, funding opportunities, applications, and grants. In the screenshot, the modules are circled in yellow in the menu. Some modules are made up of sections, which give you access to specific functions within that module. So, for example, the dashboard module includes the sections work assignments, calendar alerts, my site visits, and document repository. In the screenshot, the sections with the dashboard modules are circled in green. Currently, the work assignment section of the dashboard module is open. If we wanted to navigate to a different module in GMS, we can use the navigation menu at any time to get there. And so let's change modules now and head over to the My Profile module. Sweet. So here we are in the My Profile module. The My Profile module is where you can review and update your personal information, such as your contact details. So the system always has the most current information about you. Additionally, by scrolling to the bottom of this page, you can see the organizations you're associated with in our systems and make updates to those organizations as well. Keeping your profile and organization information up to date ensures that you're receiving the right communications and alerts. So it's super, super important if any information changes that you update that in here. To update your profile from the navigation menu on the left-hand side, you'll select My Profile, and then you'll click Edit My Profile in the top right to make your changes. We can see what this looks like on the next slide. So after selecting Edit My Profile, you'll be brought to the editing screen, which is on the left-hand side. You can update your information as needed. It's important that you fill out all required fields, and those fields are marked with a red asterisk. The email field circled in green is an example of a required field. Your profile will not save unless all required fields are completed. So just that's another reason to make sure you're entering data into all of those fields. Once you've entered all your data, you can select Save My Profile to confirm any changes that needed to be made. When your profile saves successfully, you'll be returned to the viewing screen pictured on the right. If you aren't returned to this viewing screen, your profile updates have not been saved. And so again, check and confirm that all required fields are filled out and try saving again. With your profile up to date, you are now ready to start working with the real heart of GMS, your grant. And so we'll move on to the next track, which is an absolute Bob. Sweet. So let's use the navigation menu again. And this time we're going to select the grants module. You'll be brought to a list of all the grants you currently have access to in GMS. If this is your organization's first grant with CDFA, you'll only see a single grant listed here. If you have many grants, you can use the search field to find a specific one quickly. To open a grant, click on its row, and this takes you to the full grant record. For everyone on this call today, we should be looking for a grant with the funding opportunity called 34900, 2026 and 2027 investment tax credits. So once we open up that grant, we can see inside. Perfect. The first thing I want you to notice when we open a brand new grant is the grant ID at the top of the screen, circled in green. This number is unique to the grant, and it's the fastest way for us to locate it in the system, us being the CDFA. And so if you ever email or call us about your grant, letting us know the grant ID will help us confirm exactly what project you're referring to very quickly. Next, let's look at the header information just below the grant ID. The important things here are circled in yellow. So the first is grantee contact. That's the primary contact person for this grant. This should be the primary person you want all communications about this grant to flow through for your organization. If this grantee contact is incorrect, please reach out to your project manager so they can update it as needed. And that leads us to the second important piece of information, which is the project manager. So this is the CDFA staff member who's assigned as the primary point of contact for your project. This is conveniently listed right at the top of your grant. So if you ever forget, their name's right there for you. Lastly, let's talk about available to project. And here's an important note. This number listed at the top of the grant can be misleading. The available to project value is a calculated value, and it's based on the total amount of money that has been paid to the CDFA by donors minus the CDFA's fees. It does not mean that you can submit claims for that amount. You must complete all required fundraising before submitting any claims. And also, once you start submitting claims, this number is not updated. So it will not reflect your actual claimable balance. In general, it's not a very helpful figure for managing your grant. So I'd recommend not paying too close attention to it. And Scott will provide guidance on a more appropriate place to look for making meaning of your fundraising and grant progress. Lastly, let's talk about components. In this screenshot, they're circled in blue. Each grant is made up of multiple components. You can think of them like tabs in a binder. Each one holds related information or tools like budget, status reports, or claims. And we'll dive deeper into components later. But for now, I just want you to be familiar with where to find them. So to use a component, all you need to do is click on its name from this list. Wow, the applause is deafening. Let me know if it's time for an encore, and I might come back on stage for a few more hits. But other than that, I will pass it off to Scott.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nate. Appreciate that walkthrough and the tour, I should say. And Melissa, yeah, anything come up for questions?
Yeah, so not specific to the grants management system, although I'm sure questions on that might be coming, Nate. But looking to clarify that tax credits need to be pledged for both years before you can submit a claim, even if all tax credits for year one are secure and paid. So,
Um, Sorry, Melissa, were you gonna?
yeah, so did you hear,
uh,
looking to clarify that tax credits need to be pledged for both years before you can submit a claim, even if all tax credits for year one are secure and paid?
Thank you. I didn't catch all that. So, yes, that is the way it is written into the contract for that's for a 2-year award. A 1-year award is written a little bit differently, and you can, in your contract, it describes that as a certain percentage of the pledges and payments in. If there's sort of a question on, cash flow, we could potentially talk about that if the bulk of the project, is committed. There are, otherwise the non-CDFA funds, but you need earlier dollars. There are ways to do bridge loans through your tax credit award, and there might be ways to request an amendment to get your funds a little bit early, but those are all sort of special situations. But typically, both years of pledges are in, and then whatever dollars have come in the door, you can submit a claim for. And happy to talk more about that as you move along in your project.
Great, thanks, Beth. That's all the open questions we're seeing at this time.
Okay, great. Then, thanks, Melissa. Then we will move on to dive a little deeper into the administration of your award. And again, what Nate described is kind of how to get through, move around in GMS, which can be challenging sometimes. But once you get in there and get used to it and how it's structured, it's not that bad. The last slide that he had talked about components, which we will be talking about a lot here. And in fact, the list here, these are both components and specific areas of administration that we'll sort of dive into. Um, so these are the names of some of the components that he had listed there, not all of them, but the key ones that you'll be working with. And the first one I want to talk about is the document checklist. So if you've received a previous CDFA award, note that the place where documents are housed is actually different. It was in multiple places before. You didn't do a lot of uploading before, but we've consolidated things into this document checklist. So this is a significant update, and we think you'll find it very helpful. The component can now help you quickly understand what administrative milestones have been met for your grant, what documents are required for grant compliance, and then what documents have already been reviewed and verified by CDFA staff. Again, this is new to us as well, so we'll work through it together this year. CDFA we will try to move pertinent documents from your application that already meet some of these requirements into this section. We're hoping to do that by the end of August to fill this out more. Some have already been, uploaded. And the additional documentation might be required as you move into different stages. For example, when you want to request funds from CDFA or submitting your final claim for funds. Anyone from your organization that is connected to this specific award will have access to view and upload documents. So I'll go into now a little bit about using this checklist. So to start out with, you'll see the list of documents that might be needed, and if you see this green check mark next to the box, then those are ones that we've deemed are required for your award. Again, we're going to try to show you those requirements and check those off, move things over, kind of get this all lined up. A lot of it's in place now, but by the end of August, we're hoping to get everything, that needs to be shown as required is required. CDFA or the grantee may then upload documents into this section. You would click the edit button on the right. Again, these green buttons are often for editing or saving whatever the screen is in front of you. And then we will move into verifying the documents that you upload. So this way you can see a green check box on the left and know there's a required document. Once we see it's uploaded, we will verify it's appropriate. For example, if you uploaded a document that wasn't signed, it wasn't executed, or it didn't have the right documentation, like a mortgage that was not recorded, we wouldn't verify it until it had the proper documentation with it. And then once it's verified, you can know that you're all set with that. We do not get an alert every time you upload something to this component. So just, check in, and if you see something's been sitting for a while and hasn't been verified, or you feel like something, we've put a requirement there that shouldn't be, just check in with us and we'll work together. So we'll periodically review this and make sure the verifications are there. Once you've provided sufficient documentation, your project manager will check off the appropriate milestones, which are at the top there. And this, for example, might allow you to submit your first claim, such as that yes or no box there for being able to submit that claim. So this is a way that you can kind of see where you stand in your award, and it's something you can go back to whenever you want to check, rather than a lot of the email exchanges we used to do, to ask the question and then time passes. So I think this will be very helpful for you. All right, so the contracts component, again, another component in that list that Nate showed you, includes award letters and contracts, as you see here. We won't go into a lot of detail because in most cases, the contracts are already in process or have been completed already. However, it's important to note that the contract contains key information about the terms of your award. These might include the allocation amount for your award for each year, the timeline for pledges and payments on pledges, the requirements for reporting, the performance lien that's required that came from your application or our conversation since then, and then the project outcomes that your organization has committed to. This is the, official contract between the your organization and ours. So this is where, the language you can refer to for those details. Make sure to reference the contract if you have questions on these items. So written communication with CDFA relating to your project should be conducted in the correspondence component of GMS for your project. I know the tendency is to go back and forth in email, but really this is the official communication record for your project. So anything that's, important documentation information should really go through this component in GMS. You will receive your award letter, your contract, donor instructions, and certain communications through correspondence. An email will be sent out through the system. It'll notify you when you have received a correspondence in the grants management system. Please make sure your spam filter doesn't block messages from the email address listed there so that you make sure to get these. Also, replies to the GMS generated emails will not reach us unless you include a direct staff email in there. So usually we try to copy ourselves on correspondence that goes out, and you should try to do the same. But if you're replying through your email, make sure to add on your project director or program manager to that email so that they definitely get your email if you're responding through email. Okay, so the status reports component contains monthly fundraising reports, annual status reports, and various types of requests for amendments to your award. I will provide detail about the fundraising report because that's coming up for you, and then I'll give a brief overview of the others, which are going to be a while, or you might not even use an amendment request. So the fundraising reports are due September 5th and every month thereafter while you're fundraising. A new report will be generated in the grants management system for you to complete about a week before your report is due. I'll walk you through the primary steps to complete a report since you'll be doing this soon. Once you access your grant components, select status reports, and then you'll see in the first one that you'll see is what you see here, but over time this list will grow. Find the tax credit monthly fundraising report with the appropriate reporting period. So you'll see in yellow, the type of report. You'll see the status that it's in. So currently it's in the editing status, which means we've created it, but you have to fill it out and then submit it. It might be submitted at one point. It might be approved at another point. And then you can look over and see the period for which this is covering. Make sure you've got the right report that you're working on for the right time frame. You can click into the report by clicking anywhere on that line from the first screenshot, and then you can in the second screenshot you can click the green button to edit the report. Again, the green buttons on the right are often for editing and saving whatever page that you're on. All right, so next you'll see the subcomponents of your status report. So these are the different sections, and you can click on each one of these to edit and save that section. I'm just going to show you if you clicked on the second subcomponent there, when you dive into the report, this is what you'll see. You can click on, well, actually, when you click on it, you'll see this form without you'll see a green edit form button. And then when you click on that green edit form button, it'll lead you here where you can actually edit the form. We're mostly focused on fundraising progress here, but we split this into two sections. This is a little bit of an updated version of this report as well to try to streamline it a bit, make it clearer. The first section's about fundraising. The second section's about your project implementation, the construction, permitting process, whatever that might be. So both sections have a narrative. And actually the first drop box in each is to just say that you feel like you're on track or off track, and the narrative is to help explain why. In the project update at the bottom, you might say, we just got our permitting that we've been waiting for. Next, we're going to move into this phase. It just helps give us a short update. These can be very simple descriptions for us to just have a feel. Otherwise, we're waiting until July or a conversation with you to get an update. So share your successes, share the obstacles here, keep it brief. In the first section, the fundraising piece, again, you're going to say whether you're on track in that first drop down or off track. You can upload a report, which I'll show you an example of in a minute, and that's going to tell us a little bit more about the kind of outreach that you've been doing, and then a narrative explaining, have you hit some obstacles, have you had some successes, etc. And make sure to save these as you go. So here's an example fundraising report. And this can be in Word, it can be in Excel. This is really should be your document to help you with your prospects and your outreach. All right, you can use this example if you like and break it out this way. You can do it another way if you want. Most important here, we don't really want to see a list of 100 prospects. That's not as helpful as seeing several prospects and all the work you're doing to work through meeting with them, reaching out to them, getting some decision making by them. And so it basically has the name of the prospect, the time frame which you've reached out, or the sequence of reaching out to them, what the result was, how much you've asked for, and what your next steps are. Again, this is your document to help you, and we just want to have some insight to how it's going along each month. And we really want to see that you're not sending the same report each month, that you've made some progress on meeting with folks. All right, this is, again, the list of types of reports that are in your status reports component. The fundraising report we just talked about, and then the annual status report, which is circled there, again, due July 31st, so no need to talk much about it other than this is showing progress towards your project outcomes that you've proposed in your application that we've approved. You can read more about this report and the other reports in the implementation guide. And the same goes for everything we're talking about here. You can find out more in that guide. And then at the end, you'll see the amendment requests are also accessed here. If your project has a change in its scope, budget, or another area along the course of your project, then we would require you to submit an amendment request. This form can be accessed again in status reports, and it will tell us a little bit about what you're requesting and will require more information. Please don't send any of those requests through correspondence or through an email to us. It has to be here, but feel free to reach out separately to kind of ask what's the appropriate way to handle a certain situation. That's fine. Okay, the donor management component. This is going to be really useful soon, or perhaps you're already using it. This helps you keep track of how you're progressing with your fundraising and who's been contributing. So I'll be looking at my other screen here to help walk you through this. I'm going to sort of walk through to help you understand this a little bit better, not touching on every single aspect of it, but I think the key ones. So first, it shows you the total gross award amount, and here's an example, and then the amount of pledges that you've received to date. Next is the balance that you need to raise. And then the net award amount, how much would actually be coming to your project when all the funds, from these pledges come in. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the net award amount, how much you've been awarded that is meant for your project, excluding the CDFA fee. The last one there, again, as Nate mentioned, this is not so helpful because it's not actually ready for you to claim it. I'll show you how it's documented, how, we get to that number in a little bit, but that's not necessarily what you can claim at this point. Moving down to the donor management table at the bottom. So the donor section shows which donors have pledged, the year of the pledge. So in the 2027 state fiscal year, you'll see a new set of rows for that section. The amount that has been pledged. So there's two pledges here, one for $90,000 and one for $10,000. The date of the pledge. And then the due date for the payment. So this is the pledge date, the date the pledge came in, and then the date that it's due, the date that they'll be paying on the pledge. Next, it shows the amount that CDFA has received. So you'll see here in the first row, there has been no funding received because the pledge due date is until September 30th, which hasn't arrived yet. In the second column, the pledge due date already happened, and that $10,000 came in the door. Skipping over, you'll see the receipts net of the CDFA fee. So we had a $10,000 pledge that was paid already, that came into the door, and the net amount that will become available eventually to the project is $8,000. As I've said before, you have other requirements to meet before you can claim those funds. And finally, once a pledge comes in, you will see here a link to that pledge agreement that has the terms and the details of those pledges in case you want to see sort of more detail on the donor to make sure you're aware. Sometimes businesses can use multiple names and you'll be able to see a contact there and stuff like that. Okay. Melissa, just stop me if there's any questions yet, because that was a lot of information as well.
Yeah, Scott, maybe a good time to pause. We just have one question about report templates, and I think it would be helpful to clarify whether CDFA will be providing a template for fundraising reports or if the project should. So this question specifically asks, if CDFA personnel uploads the report template about a week before it's due, can we assume the template will be the same each month and can therefore write a draft prior to that so we can copy and paste into it? This would help if timing of the due date conflicts with other calendar events, vacations, for example. So maybe just clarifying what that report template is and who's responsible for it and how maybe they can manage that as a project.
I think I've got it. So understand the question. So the fundraising report that you saw in GMS that I walked through, those will be created each month, and I don't believe they're copied over. So the text, the narrative will be new each time, and you'll check off, am I on track, off track? That will be new for each month, but you don't have to create the actual form each time. That will be created for you. So you'll go into GMS, into the fundraising component, and you'll see that there's already a fundraising report that's set up for you to open, fill in, and then submit. As for the document that you upload, the actual tracking, kind of the meat of the whole thing, that is a spreadsheet or a Microsoft, Word file, whatever you want, that's tracking your prospects over time. You have dates in there, so that's where you can build on that document over time and basically upload the most recent version of it to that fundraising report. And so that's something you would manage on your end, is keeping track of those prospects. All you're doing is every month uploading the most recent version of that for us to see. And if you want to sort of filter out the stuff that's most recent for us to see, that's fine. But at least make sure you have dates of sort of the most recent contacts. It's tough if you don't really put dates in there, I think, for you and for us, because you want to know what's sort of when you reached out to folks last. And that's really what we're just looking for, that there's been action taken each month. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so. So it's really the form in GMS is one thing, but the document that they're using to track their outreach and engagement with donors is separate and outside of that and able to be uploaded. So that can be totally driven by the organization. not
Yes,
necessarily.
and
Okay.
I will say too, we have a lot of links in our implementation guide, and we haven't added that template I showed you for that spreadsheet template I showed you, but we can work on that and add that in case that's helpful if you want to just use what we have there. But definitely make it your own for how it works best with, you might be working with board members to work on a sheet, so we've seen lots of different versions of this. But if you would like access to a template like that, that's fine. We can add that to the guide as a link.
Awesome. That's all the questions I'm seeing right now.
Okay. So now I will just mention that to access your tax credit funds, the project must demonstrate it has secured all of its tax credits, overall funding for the project has been secured, and the required performance security instrument is in place. So I know there's lots of questions about the timing of when you can request funds, and you can read more about that in the implementation guide and see that in our document checklist. But really, we want to make sure before money goes out the door that you'll be able to secure enough funding for the project that it's fully moving forward and that you have, the pledges secured, and then we can only pay the money that's come in the door. So you've got your required documents, you've got your pledges, and then the money that's come in the door. Those are the basic requirements for your claim, in addition to showing invoices and such, which is sort of a separate piece you can look at in the implementation guide. I'm not going to go into all those details because you're probably not submitting a claim for quite a while, so you can read up on that later. Um, and then let's see. I think that's all I wanted to say about claims. Feel free to ask questions, but again, you're probably not submitting a claim for a while, so you can read about that guidance. And in the implementation guide, there's both the step-by-step guidance in GMS as well as information about what documents you'll need to upload as part of the claim, such as invoices and such. Okay. So going back to this slide just to remind you, the implementation guide is sort of the key resource that I mentioned earlier. Um, and it's probably your best reference in addition to working with your project manager. The resource links are a table at the end of the implementation guide, so that you have kind of one-stop, shop to go to different links if you're looking for, I'd like a template for a mortgage deed so that I can go take care of, the lien that I need for this, and items like that. Or how do I submit a claim in GMS? It's all in that implementation guide and connected via those links. And then the Resource Hub website, again, has additional information if you wanted to look back at Tax Credit 101 and more resources for the tax credit program. And Melissa can, if you don't mind, putting that link for the Resource Hub in the chat. Again, the implementation guide, we're going to send you a link in probably this afternoon or tomorrow. Okay, I'm also reshowing you this timeline slide because again, there's a lot of good information there. This is located in the guide as well, so you can refer to it there. Feel free to, reach out with any questions about this. As far as next steps, so we will send you an email later this week that'll have today's presentation. It'll have links to the implementation guide, and we might have some other information for you. We'll send that out. Make sure that all of the members of your organization that will be involved in this implementation of this award are registered in GMS. Make sure you start jumping into fundraising as soon as possible, and prepare a document to track your prospects and get your planning going for that piece of this. And then upload any missing documentation into the document tracker component. In some cases, we'll be reaching out to you to ask for that documentation, but there's always now this place where you can go to and say, hey, what am I missing? How can I be kind of ahead of the game here? And then reach out to us with any questions. And with that, we'll take any final questions. We really look forward to working with you as a partner and bringing your project through. And we encourage you again to reach out to us.
Sure. So we do have another question about submitting a claim. So they're looking to clarify that we can submit a claim before we have finished raising all the money for the project For instance, if we are in a large capital campaign, CDFA just wants to see that the fundraising for the overall campaign is moving forward, correct?
So the way it's written in the contract is all of your pledges need to be secured from both years before you can submit a claim for any money that's actually come in the door. If there's reason why it makes sense for you to, like if you've raised all your pledges from the first year, and then you're seeking some of the funding from that first year, that's some of the donations that have already come in the door, you can submit a request for early release of funds through that status reports component. But unlikely, unless all of your pledges from your first year have come in, it's unlikely we would even consider that. So again, pledges all need to be in, uh, and it's supposed to be in by contract in over the course of the 2 years. We would consider it after the first year. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. If they have secured pledges for both years fundraising and have $40,000 in hand as far as like cash in the door from donors, they could potentially submit a claim against the amount of money that we have cash in hand from a donor.
Correct. Again, we do want to make sure when we talk with with you about this, about what's going on with the rest of the project. In some cases, everyone has, the project might have totally committed funding for the rest of the project. In other cases, they came in a little bit early and there's still quite a bit to raise. So we really want to understand how the project is going to move forward. What happens if that grant that they've applied for doesn't come in? We just want to make sure that the project is going to be moving forward before we put money out the door. Because remember, it's if the project for some reason wasn't able to move forward because the rest of the funding didn't come in, then CDFA, we're required to look at if you haven't met your outcomes to, have those funds come back to us if you're not able to perform on your award. Again, that's not what we want to do, but that's why we want to ensure early on we feel comfortable that the project is gonna, make it through to the end line.
Great. So have another question. The deadlines that I'm seeing in our contract for 2-year grants say pledge deadlines for year 2 are not due until March 30th, 2027. Maybe I am misunderstanding these deadlines and what they mean. They'll ask their project manager, but I think it's worth explaining that folks can be fundraising for both years, but that each fiscal year has a different deadline for the pledges needing to be secured.
Correct. So for the current state fiscal year 2026, pledges can be coming in anytime, and the donor can decide both, when they're, pledging, when the pledge is going to be due for them to pay on it. And some might say, I want to give you $50,000. I'm going to give you $25,000, in December of this year, which is fiscal year 2026, and I might give July 1st of I'm sorry, December 31st of 2025, which is state fiscal year 26, the current year. And then they might say, I'm going to give the second part of it July 1st of 2026, which is actually state fiscal year 2027. And so that's, kind of up to them or you working with them. But again, you want to be getting in those pledges and their date that they want to pay them as early as you possibly can, so that you can look to claim your funds. We have projects that are already moving into construction now. We have projects that are not going to be moving into construction for, a year. So it really varies by the project. So feel free to reach out to talk more about it.
Yep. So you can be fundraising for both state fiscal year 2026 and 2027, but you need to secure all of your pledges for your state fiscal year 2026 allocation by March 30th of 2026. And then ultimately, when you look at your state fiscal year 2027 allocation, those pledges need to subsequently be secured by March 30th, 2027. So it's the cadence of the fiscal year that you're allocated and how that aligns with the deadlines on the calendar. So,
Thank you for the deadline part, Melissa.
yes, and always happy. Please reach out if it's still confusing or you have questions specific to your project, because these are things we talk through all the time.